Welcome to the Central Connecticut Intergroup-A meeting. My name is Eric and I am an alcoholic.
Hi, Eric.
Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of people who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. It does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And I have asked David to read how it works.
Hi, my name is Dave and I am an alcoholic.
Hey, Dave.
And this is how it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to the simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. Now, some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us, but there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory. When we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order, I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if he were sought.
Thanks, David.
And please help me welcome our speaker, Nancy.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Nancy.
So I guess I start at the beginning. My parents were immigrants from Canada, and when they moved here, they basically didn't know English. And they moved into a home having 2 children already, and they proceeded to have my sister and myself living in that home. And we were very secluded as a family because my parents didn't know anybody, couldn't really make friends, that kind of thing. So I started my life knowing seclusion and things to that nature. Like, we didn't play outside of the yard. We played in our yard, and that was it. The farthest, or the earliest memory of tragedy in my life that I can remember is, the first memory I have is about 3 years old, being sexually abused. And that continued till I was a teenager. So being in the house all the time, being secluded, I didn't really know much more than that. You know, I mean, I went to public schools, that kind of thing, but it wasn't spoken, that kind of idea. And one of our neighbors also did the same thing to me, so it was a constant thing. I proceeded never drinking at that point. I mean, I in high school I partied a couple times, nothing too extravagant, and wasn't alcoholically. Then I met my first husband, and he was an alcoholic, and I was with him a total of 24 years. He, at that point, was full-blown beyond anything I could ever understand at that point. But again, followed into the same pattern of abuse, in the same sense. And I wanted out after we had a couple of kids. It's like, I can't let my daughters learn that this is okay. I found out years later that one of my daughters witnessed one of those events, and that was the point where it was like, this has got to stop. I can't keep living like this. They can't see this. And I was pretty much addicted to his chaos of being an alcoholic. It let me isolate even more, because we didn't go out to see family. We didn't go to any gatherings or out to eat or anything like that, because God only knew when he would be obnoxiously sober, or drunk, excuse me. And again, didn't really drink during that time at all. And in 2008, I finally gave in and said, that's it. I divorced my ex, left our house with my kids, moved into an apartment that friends of my kids' mother offered me an apartment without me even having to go search. So I was blessed back then, not even realizing it. And a year later, I met my second husband, and what a godsend. I can't even explain. It was sent to me in an email by my father that my father said, "I'm so glad the sun is finally shining on you." And I was Dad's girl. We were 3 girls and a boy, and my brother had gone off to the service, and I became Dad's second son. I can burn a kitchen because I can't cook to save my life, but I know how to build it back up. So, 2010, after I'd known my husband for a little while, my sister passed. She died of a brain tumor, and we had to pull the plug on her. And that was difficult for me, because she was pretty much the friend I had. She was my oldest sister. She was there all the time. She protected me a lot. And she didn't even know she was protecting me. So it was very difficult for me to lose her. And trying to heal, I started writing. I would write poems or just things, just like a page of something to write, and that helped for a while. But then I started having a drink here and there, and that got a little bit more intense. And then 11 months later, my father passed of a traumatic brain injury. He was hit by a tree branch and lived for about 7 or 10 days after that. And it was that Halloween that got canceled because of the ice storm. And never forget that. I snapped. I broke. I was done. I was a complete basket case. And from that time on, somewhere in that time frame of traveling back and forth to Maine, we ended up pulling the plug. And I started drinking every day. Full on, 100% alcoholically, right from the time I knew, when both my sister and my father had passed. It was just, and blackout probably started 6 months after that, maybe. And as I drank, I got, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And I was still functioning. Not well, I'm sure, but I still had my job. I still had my apartment. Wasn't married yet to my second husband, but we got married, and again, so blessed. He arranged for my mother to be at his family's house on Christmas, and he proposed to me in front of the entire family. And that was the beginning of, the marriage and things. And as my father had said, the sun had finally started shining on me, and it really was, but I was still growing strong in my alcoholism, to the point where I was ready to, save myself some money, and I was only drinking 30 proof alcohol, and I figured, well, if I go to 100 proof, yeah, I'll save money. I won't drink as much. Yeah, it didn't work. So we were married, and he was the best stepfather to my kids. My poor husband, my daughters were just insane to him. Mere teenage torture. But he just did it with the grace of a gentle man. Couldn't have asked for a better stepfather for my kids. Kind of wish he'd have been the father of my kids, but that's a whole other story. And as my alcoholism grew, he knew what was going on. And I remember a few times being blown out of my mind drunk. And I actually said, I think I'm an alcoholic. And he said, yeah, I know. And he just looked at me with a kind face, never criticized, never did anything, He's like, when you're ready. He had grown up with an alcoholic father, so he knew all the signs and everything. So in 2017, on September 9th, 2017, I was in a hospital in our town, detoxing, and I've been sober ever since. And my husband has been there every step of the way, nothing but supportive. My kids have been extremely supportive. Anytime I get my oldest daughter actually bought me a shadow box for my coins for anniversaries, and every time I get a coin, I put it in there, and it sits in my living room. And wasn't for my higher power, I wouldn't be sober today. I clung to my husband. He was definitely my biggest fan, my biggest supporter. Him and my mother were definitely the two crutches I needed to get through that first year and then some. I couldn't have done it without. And my kids were also very supportive. They knew their father was an alcoholic and that how he acted, but I don't think they realized that I was. I hid it from them pretty well. There were a few times they knew I had been drinking, but they still really didn't understand that I was an alcoholic, I don't think. That or they never said anything. But as I made amends to everyone, my mother, my husband, my kids were the kindest. You were a great mom. You did what you had to do, and this, that, and the other thing. And they were all I can say is kind. You know, they were my gift when I had them, and they've been my gift ever since, you know. I feel as though even now that I pushed them out of our house with my behavior, but we have a good relationship now, thanks to the program. I don't think it would have been the same way had I not gotten sober. And, a few years after I got sober, my youngest had taken some pills and partied a little bit, and it was a rule in the house that there was no partying and no alcohol and no drugs and that kind of thing, and she came home like that, and after a big situation in our house, we had to kick her out, and I believe she was 17 or 18, I don't know. Police put a restraining order on her, the whole 9 yards, and she spent a good year couch hopping, and you know, I barely knew where she was at any time. I would get information about, yeah, I saw her down on such and such a road, and the police had spoken with her. She was looking for her glasses, walking around in the dark, middle of the night, you know, and it broke my heart because I felt it was all my fault. It was what I had taught her almost, you know. And not long after that, I got a phone call at 3 o'clock in the morning. Mom, I need help. And because I was sober and my higher power led me to go get her, and I told her, if I'm going to come, I'm going to help you, but I'm going to help you my way, not the way you think I'm going to help. So I picked her up. She didn't recognize me. She's like, I'm waiting for my mom. And I said, I am your mom, honey. You know, look, this is my car. This is where we used to have our dog come in. And I was trying to get things to remind her. And I brought her to the hospital. And a friend from AA met me there and befriended my daughter as well. You know, it was difficult to put her in a hospital like that. And then we sent her to Florida. And she got sober, but I don't know if it'll ever happen, but I hope it doesn't. She's not addicted like I am. She doesn't party all the time and that kind of thing. I think it possibly may have been just a point in her life that was difficult for her, you know. But I would not have survived being a help like that to her if I wasn't sober, you know. Not that it was super easy, but it was a gift that I was able to do that, and I'm very grateful that she came out of that in a positive way. And now, I mean, I have grandchildren, you know, one that runs up to me, Meemaw. She can barely say Meemaw, but, you know, hey, I know what she's saying. And she knows what she's saying, you know, and to be able to have those children be in my life is amazing. You know, they exhaust me, don't get me wrong. I need a day or two after I have them for a little while to recover. I even go to work on Mondays to recover. You know, go to work to rest. No, but, and then the relationship I have with my daughters and husband/boyfriend and, you know, all that, they're just wonderful, and I couldn't ask for more, you know, and I've come to terms with a lot of things in my life that I struggled with for a long time, and I'd gone to therapy for years, and not until I worked the program, or started working the program, did any of that heal. I mean, I paid thousands in therapists and psychiatrists and, you know, things like that, and none of that worked. And AA did. The steps worked. I can't say I'm completely sane, don't get me wrong. You know, The world is very happy I'm on my medication. But I can see things now clearly, I guess you would say, and not live behind that pain. And my family's well aware of the pain that I suffered, and I don't blame anyone anymore for that kind of reaction that I had. It was my own reaction. It was my own doing. Getting sober was not really my doing either. I just called my niece and said, I can't do this anymore. And she was about 40 minutes away. And I went up to change the sheets on my bed, and I came down maybe 10, 15 minutes later, and there she was at the bottom of my stairs with 2 EMTs ready to bring me to the hospital. So I have the support of family, and there is really no one in my life that has outed me, for lack of a better term. I didn't lose it all, but if I go out there, I will. I know I will. You know, I have a great life now. Job, roof over my head, new roof tomorrow, that I can actually contribute to paying for. You know, in pretty much every part of my life, I am more than just satisfied with. I'm content with, and I'm joyful. You know, and again, without working the steps the way I do, I would not be here. You know, so with that, thank you.
American alcoholic.
Hey,
I'd like to thank you for speaking, and congratulations on your anniversary.
Thank you.
It worked out well to have you speak tonight, and I really identified with. For a second, I felt like your daughter. I lived that. My mom being the person that was there to basically save me, and yeah, it brought me back to those phone calls when I was in Florida and homeless, and thinking living on the beach was totally normal and there was nothing wrong with this, and eating out of a dumpster, that was totally normal, and I was just in the grips of my addiction. And you know, one phone call to my mom, you know, and you know, was able to you know, eventually get the help I needed. And you know, touching on the steps, it's you know, I went through years therapy and all that, thinking that was going to be the cure-all, and it never was for me, you know. And it wasn't until you know, getting sober this time, and jumping in head first and doing everything that, you know, was told of me to do, you know, which was to work the steps. And you know, last couple months I've started doing them again, because I've just felt like I needed to you know, start over, you know, that process. And it's been an amazing thing. And you know, you've been kind of right there to go along with that, you know, in that particular meeting, and that's been great. So yeah, I just want to thank you again for speaking, and again, congratulations.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks, Eric.
My name is David, I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, David.
Thank you very much, Nancy, for sharing, and happy anniversary.
Thank you.
One thing that, and it's repeated through a lot of people who speak, is that we are like the phoenix rising from the ashes. It's amazing how the amount of crap and stuff we go through to get here. You know, people say, you know, we earn this seat, and there's something about that. But people who have come and who have worked this program, you know, and gotten involved with the fellowship, their life has just changed dramatically. And everyone here that I know, it's been the same thing. I mean, it talks about eating out of a dumpster, you know, and that's normal, you know. Being, you know, so drunk that you know you can't even see, you know, and That's not normal, you know. And the other thing is, what's amazing, and you hit on it a little bit, is how much, once you start getting sober, how much your family is so glad that you're doing this. And there's not a lot of repercussions. They're just so glad that it's over for you, you know. And I'm glad you're sober. I'm glad you're enjoying life. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, David.
Hi, my name's Lisa, I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Lisa.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
You know, it's such a big deal when you have an anniversary, and we sometimes like gloss over it, but truthfully, it's such a big deal, like, right? Just think about the time that, the healing time that we've had, and the 24 hours, but the people that we've affected since we've been in the program with, you know, the changes that we've made. And, you know, I had an experience this week where I got a text message on Sunday from a family member, and brought a family member to a meeting yesterday, and it's because I stayed sober, right? And he's a kid, and he's like, I remember, like, that you were sober. And I wanted to reach out to you, and I was like, right? Because
That's
those
a
things
gift.
they don't happen every day, and when they do, like, it's good, it's so good. And, you know, I'm super grateful that you were here, your story. I loved one of the things, and people can't see it, and maybe they could hear it, but when you talk about your drinking and your past, you were so quiet and so sat back in your chair, and when you talked about sobriety, you were louder, and you moved up in your chair, and you were more engaged with us, so to speak, and that's what AA does, right? We don't always see it, but that's what AA does, and so what a fine example you set for me today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Lisa. Hi, my name is Deanna, and I'm an alcoholic.
Thank you.
Dan.
And I could relate a lot to your story. I think just a lot, and even kind of where my drinking and later on in years is what landed me in, you know, into Alcoholics Anonymous. And I had, you know, kind of a time period where I didn't drink. I don't call it sober, but kind of like you were saying, like the progression is just there. And I know if I were to ever pick up a drink, anything that I have ever gained would be gone. But what really resonated with me, what you talked about, what I heard was like, you know, family and ridding yourself of self-centeredness. And, you know, I have a history of abuse in my story too. And I kind of love when people share about that, because like you said, there comes a point in time where just the insidiousness of self-centeredness around that, and how the steps can help us look at that and see that and be able to move on. And, you know, I think for me too was definitely the steps. And I like to say it like, you know, kind of matter of factly, like I learned how to be accountable for the first time in my life. Like I learned how to be accountable for what I did and what I said, and learned how to not finger point, and, you know, and accept that I had really dysfunctional coping skills, and through sobriety, I have created decent coping skills. Nobody's perfect, you know, kind of like you shared about, but I heard a lot of that in your story, and how at the end of the day, like, I feel the same way. Money is great, and like all that kind of stuff is great, but the relationship that I have with my family is what's more important, and that how I can be present for my family and my 3 kids. My kids watch me drink too, and I've gotten to make amends to my oldest one, and, you know, and just kind of, and again, like Lisa was saying, like, or David, I'm sorry, said, like, we're just kind of glad it's over for you, and I'm glad that you don't have to go through this. So I could definitely relate a lot to that, and I think the things that bring me the biggest joy are my family, right, are my kids, and seeing that. And I heard a lot of that in your story, and how you talked about, like, you know, I've gotten promotions, I've gotten this, I've gotten that, I've done better, but what means the most to me is my relationships with my family. You know, being there for my mother when she was sick, being there for my father when he was sick, being able to be there for my kids now. So it's awesome. Thank you.
Just want to thank Nancy again and everyone for sharing, and we will end with the responsibility statement. I am responsible
anyone, anywhere reaches out for help. I want the hand of AA to be there.
always be there, and
For that I am responsible. Throw something at me next time.
Well, tick,